Okay, now I'm going to show you the steps for adding and subtracting unlike fractions. And step number 1 is to find a common denominator. We'll talk about that when we start doing the examples. Step number 2 is to do the math with the numerators. Step 3 is to put the result over the numerator. Over the denominator. And step 4 is to simplify if necessary. So it's similar to like fractions. The only difference is the first step you have to find a common denominator. Okay. The first example I'm going to do is number 8 on your 1-1 homework practice B. And you have 1 7/10 plus -5 3/5. And again, I always write it vertically. It's easier for me. The only reason this number is in parentheses is because in math we don't like to write two signs next to each other without having something to separate them. So that's why they put the -5 3/5 in parentheses. So first thing we have to notice, the 10 and the 5 are not the same, right? So we need what's called a common denominator, which means we need to make them the same. So we're going to have to find a way. Well, actually, I'm sorry. I take that back. I skipped a step. Before we find the common denominator, whenever you have mixed numbers, it's easier if you just change it to an improper fraction. So let's change this to 10 times 1 is 10, plus 7 is 17. So you get 17 over 10. And 5 times 5 is 25, plus 3 is 28. So you get negative, don't forget the negative, you get negative 28 over 5. So you just you solve it the same way, 5 times 5 plus 3, and then you just stick the negative in front. Okay? So now this is your new question. 17 over 10 plus negative 28 over 5. So now, like what I was saying before, we need a common denominator. A common denominator between 10 and 5. This is how you find the common denominator. You write down the two, or you can do this in your head once you get the hang of it, but for right now I'll show you how to do it by writing it down. You put down the two denominators. In this case it's 10 and 5. And you write down a few multiples of 10, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Then you write down a few multiples of 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And you see what's the smallest number in both lists. Remember before when we were simplifying, we looked for the biggest number. But now we want the smallest number, the least number, which in this case is going to be 10. That's the least common factor. The LCF, the least common factor of 10 and 5 is 10. So that's going to be our new denominator. Okay, the new denominator is going to be 10. So all we have to do is make these fractions equal each other. This one already equals 10, already equals 10, so we can keep 17 up top. And for this one, let's write that in blue so that those of you who are color coordinated, I don't confuse you. And for this one, how can we get 5 to equal 10? We multiply it by 2. So if I multiplied the 5 by 2, I have to multiply negative 28 by 2. Negative 28 by 2 is negative 56. Okay? So now my question is 17 over 10 plus negative 56 over 10. So now I'm adding two fractions that have the same denominator. So I can keep the denominator, do the math. 17 plus negative 56 gives me negative 39. And you can leave it like that as far as I'm concerned because you can't simplify it. But if you want to change it to a mixed number, 10 goes into 39 3 times with 9 left over, and you write your negative in front. So it's negative 39 over 10 or negative 3 and 9/10. Okay, let's do a quick recap because I know that was a lot. First, you started off with two mixed numbers. I changed them to improper fractions by multiplying and then adding the numerator. Key thing to remember, don't forget your negative sign. And then my next step was to find a common denominator between 10 and 5. So I listed some multiples of 10, multiples of 5, and the smallest one was 10. That was in both lists. So that's my new denominator. Then I tried to find equivalent fractions. So 10 was already equal, so I didn't need to do anything to the 17. Down here, 5 and 10 don't equal each other, so I had to do 5 times 2, which made me do 28, or negative 28 times 2, which gave me negative 56. And then I had to do the math. So 17 over 10 plus negative 56 over 10 gave me, this was a plus sign, it got a little erased. When I added these two fractions, I keep the 10 in the denominator. That was the whole point of doing it, because now we have the same number in the denominator. And then I just do 17 plus negative 56, which gave me negative 39, which I changed to a mixed number by doing 10 goes into 39 3 times with 9 left over, keep the denominator. Okay? So that's the beauty of technology. If it didn't make sense those 2 times that I went over it, you can keep rewinding it until it does make sense. Or hopefully the next example will help you some more. I'm going to do number 9 now. Okay, so this is number 9. 7 3/5 minus 5. Oh, I'm sorry, minus negative 5 and 1/3. So first thing I'm going to do is change my numbers to improper fractions. 5 times 7 is 35, plus 3 is 38 over 5. And 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16 over 3, and it's negative. And I'm subtracting. Don't really have a lot of room there. Let's do this. It's better. Okay, so I have 38 over 5 minus negative 16 over 3. And 3 and 5, those are my two denominators. So I can write down some multiples of 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Write down some multiples of 3, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, and I find a match. If you don't find a match, you just keep writing down more multiples until you find one. So I found a match, which is 15. Sorry about that. I found a match, which is 15. So 15 is going to be my new denominator. So how do I find out what the numerator is going to be? Like I said, these have to equal. So how do you make 5 and 15 equal? You multiply 5 times 3. So let's multiply 38 times 3. And 38 times 3, I have no idea what that is. It's 114. And for the bottom, 3 times 5 gives me 15. So I'm going to multiply negative 16 times 5, and that's going to give me negative 80. Okay, so I have 114 over 15 minus, can't forget what I'm doing, I'm subtracting, negative 80 over 15. So 15 is going to be my denominator. Then I have to do 114 take away negative 80. 114 take away negative 80 gives me 194 over 15. So I can leave it like that, or I can change it to an improper fraction. So 15 goes into 194 12 times. And how much is left over? 14. And if you have no idea how I did that, then you can just do it the long way. 15 goes into 19 once. Subtract, you get 44. 15 goes into 44, let's see, 2 times. And you get 30. And what's the remainder? 14. So you get 12, remainder 14. And you keep the denominator. Okay? So hopefully it's starting to make sense to you. If not, hit rewind.